the grays you think are good? Do you even apply good or bad to them?
So, good or bad is a human concept that we have created for the rules of our reality, and it's arbitrary to things outside of this. So grays don't operate in right and wrong or good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
They just do what is efficient. And that's also the reason why, we don't see these other types of beings that people claim to communicate with interfering, because these other beings are on a soul ascension path. So, like, I do believe in reincarnation, but in many different forms, and that our soul is eternal and lives many different experiences. This is just one tiny little part of God's dream that we're living right now, but there's so much and it's infinite. So mostly, like, souls are incarnating and having different experiences, which people could call karma. And karma is like simply the cause and effect. It's not good or bad. It's not punishment or reward. It is just cause and effect. And so if you're on that path of your soul is ascending to reach a higher level of consciousness, then you're not going to interfere. However, the grays, they don't care about their soul ascending because they've already manipulated themselves for efficiency. They've already manipulated their body to not be able to feel emotions like we do. They're not going to get a pit in their stomach or a feeling in their chest or a headache from stressing about something. They've already evolved their bodies away from that. So a lot of the things that are needed for experience, for a soul to have an experience where they learn, they've already eliminated from themselves. So they think like, okay, let's just even it out. So like, oh, okay, I'm going to abduct this person. Well, we're getting something from them. We're getting probably eggs, DNA material. Who knows? Maybe this person will grow up and be some type of alien influencer. And, they have many different things that they will want from a person. And then they give that person something that they consider to be equal to even out this karma. So they're always with these equations of like, but their perception of what we want could be skewed because they're not looking at it from the same perspective.
Right.
But I think that I've like, during hypnosis, had grays communicate with me, and they gave the example that like, we don't look at a cheetah and think right or wrong about the way that it operates. So why do we look at them as right or wrong, knowing that they're a different species?
Right. I guess my problem is that them being what might be a more evolution, or they've evolved to a place where they're now like objective, like AI, that their good supersedes what we think is good. So they're abducting us is to them good, although to us it's like, if someone abducts my kid, I'm gonna go like full blown Terminator on everything, right? So like that, and then like I'm looking at it from like a like God put good and evil here. So then I don't know if I fully am on board with all aliens are demons. We had Timothy Alberino on, who has a pretty interesting take on what he thinks are demons versus aliens versus Nephilim and all that stuff. So like I have a hard time with the grays coming here and experimenting on us for some higher good. So would you say then, is it your take that what they're doing is good for like a bigger picture that humans just aren't privy to right now?
I think that's part of it. Like the same thing, if you have a cat or a dog, it obviously thinks that the vet is a demon, is the worst.
Yeah.
So like, but it is for that cat or dog's highest good to go to the vet and get what it needs to be done. And so I think it's kind of like that. And I think a lot of the people who see them as demons, it's going through their own filter. Like everything is always going through our own filter. And I think even like outside of this reality, all these other things are not operating in like good or bad. They're operating in neutrality. Like, that they're not like, and that's the thing I think that is the misconception with a lot of these alien species. A lot of people think that like, oh, the Pleiadians are good, the Arcturians are good. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're all neutral. Like everything is just neutral. And, I had an experience on ayahuasca that I like merged with oneness, which was like kind of like God,
Right.
but it was completely neutral. And it was the most mind-blowing thing ever, because I always hear everybody like say like God is love, God is love, God is love. And this experience that I had, it was just like, it's like God loves us so much that he allows us to have any experience we want, whether we see it as good or bad. And it's completely neutral, and there's no judgment of whatever experience anyone wants to have, because it's like all just observing it. And it's just literally like our entire history of this planet is not even the whole entire universe. I saw from the Big Bang to the full expansion, which I saw it as like God's breath, that it was like the Big Bang is like God's breath expanding. And then we all are having these experiences which continue to make the universe expand more and more and more. And then we reach some kind of critical point where everyone understands that they're actually one and part of God, and that none of us really exist, and we're just all in God's dream for 1 second of one breath.
Right.
And then we reach this kind of like when you do breath work and you hold your breath at the top and you have this kind of euphoric moment for a second. So we'll have this little golden age at the top, and then God breathes in and the universe is over and all of it's done. And it was just like that. It was just all an experience. It was one of God's breath from our entire 13 billion or trillion years or whatever that they say as old as this universe is.
Right. Well, it's kind of like your experience of time when you saw the UFO. Right. It's like
Right.
things are broken down, and you have an experience that feels like a lot longer, but it's really just a second. Right. So
And the same thing for psychic mediums. Psychic mediums, when they receive information about someone's passing, it's also like compressed time, because they're able to see like a whole concept of this
Yeah.
person's life, death, people, all these memories.
Right.
And it comes through in like one thing.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think it's a lot for people to take. That's why I stopped doing drugs. I never did ayahuasca, but I did do a lot, and I had these crazy experiences on mushrooms that were, my brain couldn't even handle it.
Right.
It was just too much, and my vision was turned upside down, which is funny that this show is called Inverted World. I wasn't even thinking about that, but everything was upside down, and I'm like, I don't even know what is this,
Wow.
so I don't mess with that stuff anymore, because I like it here. I think this is a beautiful world.
Me too. After I experienced that oneness,
Yeah.
the only thing I could think of was like, please let me go back. Let me be Jen again.
Right.
Like, and it's interesting, after that experience, when I told people, almost everyone else who has had a similar experience on any type of psychedelic or even sometimes near death, they're like, I didn't want to come back. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even think of that. I actually panicked so bad at the idea that I might not come back. And after that, I became like, I mean, I know I'm saying all this crazy stuff, but like I became even more grounded.
Right.
That I'm just like, you know what? And also the other thing too, when I saw like the whole universe breathing back into like God's breath, I was like, you know what? They figured this out. The Vedics figured this out 5,000 years ago. Probably 10,000 years ago, someone else figured it out. The story of this universe, we already figured it out, but we want to keep playing this game. So you know what? People who still want to do the wars, still want to do the bad stuff, still want to hurt people, still want to kill people. I'm kind of like, you know what? Thanks for allowing us to keep playing this game. Because if everyone figured it out, it would be over. And this is the greatest game that has ever existed.
Speaking of Westworld, yeah, I mean that's how I feel like we're trapped in a type of Westworld game, and some people understand it and others don't. I've heard you talk about grays or some other aliens that might be underwater. What's your idea about that?
Okay, so this kind of comes back to the Vedic stuff.
Cool.
So this like Vedic cosmology, if anybody like looks up these like images of like Vedic cosmology, and a lot of times I think these things, they get misinterpreted as flat earth, but it's a lot more like when people go to the flat earth stuff, they're basically oversimplifying a very high concept into the third dimension. But when you see this Vedic cosmology, it'll show that like earth is like all of these different planes of existence, and we're in like a middle plane of existence, and there's higher planes of existence which are like celestial realms, and then there's lower planes of existence. And so I used to believe in like this inner earth stuff as actually being below us, and like angels maybe really being above us. But now I realize that these are like the only way that we can understand these different dimensional states. So I actually think a lot of the USO underwater stuff that's happening, they're from here, from Earth. They've been here longer than us, and it's a different density or dimensional plane that exists below us, and we can only understand it as lower because it's like a denser density, and this is like a lighter density.
Right. I think there's something way crazier under the water that we're not talking about. There was like 3 years ago, one of those disclosure meetings. I always say UFO. I really don't like the UAP rebrand. The UFO committee hearing, they were asked about unidentified flying objects that were underwater, which is hilarious that they said it like that. But then they were like, well, we have to do that behind closed doors. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like, what are they going to talk about behind closed doors? Like that video from the Tic Tac. What was your take on that? Because that was going down into the water.
Right. And I do think there is also military industrial complex.
Yeah, of course.
Is a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff that's actually on video is, all of these companies that, you get like flagged for mentioning all the time, even like Jake Barber, when they said like, oh, who were the contractors you worked for? He's like, you'll take 2 guesses and you'll be right on both of them on your first try.
Right. I'm sure we talk about lots of them on this show all the time, like Lockheed Martin and
Raytheon, Boeing.
Yeah. Of course they're doing stuff. Did you ever think about that with your experience, that maybe it's something like, well, yes, you have your memories that you've retrieved, but still, do you think like they were, if it was part of our government, because people talk about my labs, right? And military abductions. Do you think a lot of this is happening in concert with our government, or is it just its own thing?
I have mixed feelings about the My Labs thing. I don't know. I think that there is definitely psychological operations that are happening within the government on government employees. Like not government employees, but like government, military, high-level people that are dealing with this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe in the 20 and back thing. Like stuff like that. A lot of these secret space program people, I think mostly are grifters. If any of them are telling the truth, they are mistakenly part of some type of psychological operation.
Yeah.
But so I think that it doesn't mean that there's like nothing like My Labs. I don't know if My Labs are happening on regular citizens because it's pretty complicated to do. Yeah. Whereas these things are more so when they're like, there's like some people from like Greer's stuff that has talked about like they were driving back to base and then this big black craft came. Stuff like that I could see potentially being My Labs. Now, going back to the MK Ultra stuff, that guy, one of the main MK Ultra researchers, and he's very Christian, doesn't believe in aliens, only believes in demons, and says that all UFO abductees and alien abductees are MK Ultra victims, and that this is just a technology from the government. That I don't believe, but if that was the case, I'd be so freaking pissed. Like I'd be so freaking pissed if the government abducted me. Then I'm like, you know what? It is evil.
They already took your soul.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah. I think anything's possible. Like I don't feel one way fully about all this stuff. I love it all. I'm fascinated by it all. But when like I've done the MK Ultra rabbit hole, I've probably done so much damage to my brain just from growing up near a military base. I was born paranoid. For whatever reason, it's in my blood. Just be like, they're all experimenting on me constantly. Like I had a tinfoil little beanie when I was born, but I've just always been that way. I don't know why. So I knowing the things that they've put out there that that we're allowed to know about. I'm like, they do anything. They will do anything to maintain power, to destroy your brain. But I also do think there's things out there messing with us, and they might be working with the powers, the leaders of the world, or some of them aren't. I really don't know. Right.